there's a motorcycle. Let's wait. And we're back. What's good, fam? Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for tuning in. I know it's been a minute. You know, we're adjusting to new ways of life, etc., etc. But for a while now, I've been considering doing a video on advisors and choosing advisors or committee members for grad school, and I kind of was holding it off, and then lo and behold, because, you know,
God's timing is always right.
There was a workshop that was offered through my alma mater on managing up, and I thought it would be perfect if I could kind of tie in some of the key things I learned from that workshop into the whole advisor discussion, and also just make it a little more, you know, broad, so that people who maybe aren't in grad school can pick up some tips and tricks too. So this video is on managing up, and whether that is your boss, your advisor, your therapist, there's so many people that you have to manage up in this world. And so knowing how to do that is just an important skill in general, and I will be talking about it from the perspective of grad school, but know that you can apply this to other areas of your life as well. So with grad school, one of the key parts of your experience is your advisor. As I've said in my other videos, you don't necessarily see your advisor every day, depending on your field. And so that might not be your biggest factor in choosing a grad school experience, but it is a very important one for shaping it. And so I thought I'd cover it a little bit here today. So in grad school, you not only have your main advisor, but when you get into the dissertation writing phase, you're also going to have a dissertation committee, which can range anywhere from 3 to 4 people who you will be managing simultaneously. Fun, isn't it? And so it'll be important for you to think about how those people interact with each other in addition to how they're interacting with you. Because I want this video to be something that's useful to you, I'd highly recommend kind of writing down 1 to 2 names of people that you're working on managing up, and there might be some questions and things I'll ask along the way that you'd jot down as well, and hopefully that'll help you to understand a little bit more about who the people are that you're managing up and your relationship to them and how you can improve that. So all those long rambles, all of it to say, let's manage up. One of the key things to any relationship really is communication, and so thinking about different types of communication styles, what might help is to kind of write your name and write the people you're managing up, their names, as titles, and then we'll do a little bullet list underneath each one. So the first communication style is direct versus indirect. That one's pretty self-explanatory. Really just consider, if you were working on a project, are you the type of person to kind of get straight to the point? Or maybe you're the type of person to take a little bit more of a narrative approach. The second communication style is task-focused versus people-focused. Throughout this whole exercise, I understand that not necessarily everything is going to be an either or. Some things can be both. So just acknowledge that for yourself as well. So an example of that is if you're planning a project or an event and you're the person who's like, we need to target this date, we need to get these logistics in order. Maybe you like to have kind of like a bulleted list of the things that you need to accomplish in order to get that project done. Or you might be the person who's kind of thinking about how are people going to engage with it. We don't necessarily need to think about dates or logistics right now. I'm more concerned with the experience that we're creating. I'm more concerned with how people are going to react. How do we get the word out there? And these more front-facing factors in planning this event or project. The third communication style is reactive versus deliberate. Right? And so are you the person who you kind of go based on how things go, for instance? So let's say I am trying to host dinner parties every week, right? Am I the person who says, let's just get the first one out of the way, try our best, see how it goes, and then get feedback and from there build? Or am I the person who's like, I'm going to make sure that everything's in order, that this will be the best one, right? And then maybe I'll top it moving forward. But I kind of want to make sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted before the dinner party happens. And then the fourth communication style is detail-oriented versus big picture. So these might sound a little bit more repetitive from the other ones. There are slight nuances, and you can think through how that might apply to the things you're working on. But this one's also kind of self-explanatory. Do you like to have the nitty-gritty of things, research projects, or projects at work figured out, and you kind of stay with that? Like, for instance, if an analysis was being done or a research project, you're kind of the person who is going line by line through the code, who is making sure that everything's in the Excel sheet correctly? Or are you the person who's like making sure that the group comes back to, or the research group comes back to the whole goal of the project and relating it back to that? So it would be helpful if you kind of identify where you lie on those spectrum and where the people you're managing up lie on that spectrum. And for me, just, I guess I'll be telling a lot about myself. So I do think I am much more direct, people-focused, big picture, and somewhere in between on the deliberate versus reactive. And I think it was helpful for me to kind of go through the people I'm managing up, my advisors, my committee members, and kind of list the qualities that I kind of see in them. That's helped me to see why some relationships have worked better than others, or why I've felt kind of connected to different advisors for different reasons. So for instance, there are some advisors where they're also big picture. And unfortunately what that means is if I'm big picture and they're big picture, that we're usually not getting things done, right? Because there's no specific task. We're just kind of getting involved and excited about the project, the things that will come out of it, etc. But things need to get done along the way, right? And so this isn't meant to say that these relationships will never work because we work different or communicate differently, but rather it's to emphasize that you can reorient yourself in these relationships a little bit more once you are aware of how they operate, right? So now I know, okay, with those people who are more big picture, maybe I need to kind of have a goal list or a task list and we revise it together, and that has to be something that I bring up in the conversation for it to happen. So these are just things to think about when you're managing up with communication style. And once again, I'd strongly suggest you do the exercise of going through each person's communication style and mapping on what works and what doesn't work for that relationship. I also think this is a useful tool for designing a committee. That could be a whole other video, but because committees consist of multiple people that you have to manage, identifying those communication styles will come in handy for figuring out which people work well together or not. 2, clear expectations. So I cannot tell you how many times I have gotten lost in the sauce because expectations were not clear, whether I didn't make expectations clear or the other person didn't. So the first thing I'd always recommend doing, whether that's a project with your boss or whatever you may have, even with your therapist, just kind of thinking through what are the major goals here and what are the specific steps to get there. Obviously, with everything, we need to allow for some type of flexibility, right? But I do think that you need both, right? And so sometimes we get so wrapped up in what the big goals are that we aren't super clear on how to get there, and that causes issues when different people go in different directions to get to those goals, and those different processes, different journeys don't really line up to actually get there for both of you. So I'd always recommend either having a meeting in person or if it's all electronically, whatever it may have you, just clarify those goals and get it in writing. Get it in writing, because I think that it's useful as a reference for both of you. And also with any project, sometimes the goals change or the steps change, and it's important to also keep track of that. So as you're working on these projects, also have check-ins when goals change. So for example, with a research project, maybe the original aims that you had or hypotheses might need to be reworked based on the actual availability of data. And the steps that you outline in the beginning are not going to be the steps that you proceed with now. So you need to make sure that you're checking in along the way with these goals, and as you check in along the way, also getting it in writing. It also is useful for you to kind of see the journey of your entire process. Also with expectations, I think with any advisor-advisee relationship, it's always important for you to reclaim your voice in that relationship too. Sometimes I've heard of grad school experiences where the advisor had certain goals for their own career path and the advisee had others, and the advisee kind of felt that they had to follow the career path or goals of their advisor because of power dynamics, right? So always try to advocate for yourself as well. So if you realize that the expectations that you both are putting together do not actually align with your goals or with the things that you're interested in, your passions, see if you can bring that into it, right? And closed mouths don't get fed. So anytime that you can advocate for yourself, or even if, for example, I keep using a research project as an example just because that's what I'm familiar with, but with these research projects, if you are interested in, racial ethnic health disparities, see if there's a way that you can tie it into the project that you're working on as well. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not doing what your advisor's plan or course of action for the research project was. It just means you're also incorporating your own passions into it to make sure that you're advancing your career in the way that you want to as well, and in the direction that you want to. The third thing is to identify the role of this person. So I gave you different examples. It can be advisors, and within the category of advisors, there's like personal advisors or mentors, academic advisors. It can be your boss, it can be your manager, other employees, your therapist. So it's important to have a very clear understanding in your own mind of what the role of that person is for you, right? And I think the best example for me is like with designing a committee. So with designing a dissertation committee, I want to make sure that I have someone who challenges me and will critique the work I do, but at the same time, I also want someone who's gonna, comfort me and make sure that I'm doing okay and make sure that I feel supported throughout the process as well. Not to say that those two qualities are mutually exclusive, but they're qualities I want, right? And so making sure that the people that you choose, the role that they play for you. The fourth thing, sometimes you just have to know when it's time to see other people. It doesn't say anything about you, it doesn't say anything about me, but it just means that this isn't working, right? And that can be for extreme reasons. Unfortunately, sometimes people are in situations where their advisors are emotionally abusive on the extreme end, or on maybe the less extreme end, you just realize that your goals don't align with their research projects or the things that they're doing, right? And so knowing when a relationship is no longer working for you is very helpful with saving your time, saving their time, and making sure that you are going in the direction that you want to at work, school, or wherever. Sometimes that means having to work with your department to make sure that you can switch. Sometimes that's not possible, right? So I kind of say that like holding my tongue a little bit because I know that that's difficult depending on the context and situation that you're in. But if you are in a more flexible situation where you can change it and you realize that all of these steps with understanding communication styles, expectations, and things like that aren't working for you, if you do have the ability to, it might be time to just kind of move on and try to find someone who does more align with your goals. So that is managing up. I hope that you can take away some key pointers about yourself, about your working relationships with other people, and that maybe this will make your life a little easier. I know a lot of things have moved to an online format, and so it might be extra important for us to make sure that these advisors, bosses, therapists, and all of these things are providing for us in a way that's useful and productive for both parties in the relationship, or all parties if it's more than two. Anyways, I hope y'all are doing great. Please remember to wear your mask, practice social distancing, please, because we want to make sure everyone in our communities are safe and healthy, and definitely make sure you take care of yourself. You gotta take care of you. With that said, be well, y'all.